Hello, I'm Paul Wagenseal from Cyber Risk Alliance, and we're here at the Identiverse conference at the ARIA in Las Vegas. I'm here with Andrew Budd, who's a founder and CEO of iProve, and we're going to be talking about the threat of deepfakes to remote identity verification systems. Now, Andrew, tell me a bit about iProve.
So, iProve provides biometric face identification and verification for onboarding and ongoing authentication, and in particular, we're the world's leading provider of liveness. You might call what we do biometrics as a service. What makes us the world leader? We serve governments, the United States government, British government, Australian government, Singapore governments worldwide, major banks like UBS, healthcare providers like the National Health Service in the UK. We provide to major enterprises who are the most discerning and demanding in the world, the services of liveness that keep biometrics usable and very, very safe. We're about 200 people. We're based in London. We've been going over 10 years. And in 2021, we received $70 million of Series B investment from Sumeria Equity Partners in San Francisco.
Now, a remote identity verification system, what exactly is that?
So, if we're talking about digital identity is ultimately a set of facts about you. But trust in the internet doesn't, and trust in online systems doesn't reside in facts. It resides in people. So at some point, you've got to bind those facts to the real human being to whom they should be attributed. And that's a dangerous and difficult moment. The way that governments have done this for over 100 years is they put a photograph on your passport or your driving license or your identity document. So the use of the face to bind a human being to their approved identity documents, that's well established. Nowadays, everything's happening online. So the task is to make sure that a remote person is whom they claim to be, that they're the right person, that they're the real person, and that they're there right now in the comfort of their own living room, in an untrusted environment, on an untrusted device.
And what are some standard ways of doing this?
So in the beginning, people just used face recognition. You know, biometric matching. Do they look like who they're supposed to look like? The problem is that you can't steal a person's face. People say, "Oh, what happens if I steal my face?" You know, I can reset my passport. I can't reset my face. I have news: you can't steal a person's face, at least not without a scalpel and a lot of blood. But what you can do is you can copy it. So the real problem you've got is detecting and preventing the successful use of copies of people's faces, photographs, images on screens, beautiful masks like the 3D death mask that we had made of me for test purposes my wife absolutely won't have in the house. And those used to be the main attack. Today, the attack vectors have become much deadlier because today we're dealing with deepfakes.
And so what kind of threat do deepfakes pose to live identity verification?
Huge. Deepfakes are a different kind of pose a different kind of scale of danger. Why? Because they can be today produced extremely cheaply. They can be produced so perfectly that today, not tomorrow, today they are indistinguishable to the naked eye, and they can be done on vast scales. You don't need people or objects anymore. You can synthesize these things technologically. So
this must be a huge problem for businesses and governments that need to verify people.
It is a huge problem, and it's becoming much worse month by month. 12 months ago, you still needed quite a lot of money and quite a lot of skill to produce a deepfake, and you could probably see some artifacts. Now just in the last year, everything has changed. So in our recent biometric threat report, we showed that one particular use of deepfakes, which is the so-called face swap attack, increased by 700% last year, and it's accelerating still further. Here at Identiverse, we showed a video of a real person and some deepfakes, and the audience was completely incapable of determining which was. The audience split down the middle, 50%, 50%, for the two sides, and yet half of Americans in a recent survey thought that they could detect a deepfake safely. Not true anymore. So now when people present online, either to have their identity verified or maybe to authenticate themselves, or just when they turn up on a video conference, there is no longer any reason to believe that you're looking at who you think you're looking at.
I know. It's gotten to the point where you have to see it with your own eyes to believe it. You know?
Well, not quite, fortunately. There are ways of detecting and preventing the successful use of biometrics.
And what would they be?
So high quality liveness is a very effective way of preventing deepfakes. The sort of high quality liveness that we deliver for governments and banks worldwide. A solution like this has to be defense in depth. There is no magic bullet. You can't put in place a disk of technology and go, there it is, problem solved.
Right.
Because the world of deepfakes is moving all the time.
Right.
This is not a static problem, it's a dynamic problem. So on the one hand, you need technology which makes life difficult for the deepfakers and causes them to make tiny mistakes. And then you need systems and processes in the cloud that are continuously watching what they're doing, continuously monitoring what they're doing, continuously detecting what they're doing, analyzing what they're doing, and responding and adapting to what they're doing. And that kind of back-end security system is absolutely fundamental to staying ahead of the deepfakers. We've been very successful at doing so far.
So give me an example of, for example, how you could detect a deepfake live interview.
So, at the beginning, and this is a real problem. Let me give you an example of how it's all gone terribly wrong and why your question is so relevant.
Right.
About a month and a half ago, one of the world's largest civil engineering civil engineering design consultants, Arup, had $25 million stolen from them when a financial controller was instructed to make that payment. This is a very cyber-aware company. They're very smart people. So he insisted upon a video conference from the board meeting. And the CEO was there instructing him, and he got permission from all the board members around the table. The attackers had deepfaked every single board member's face. They had deepfaked the CEO.
Wow.
They deepfaked the entire interaction. There was no way that the financial controller could have known that he wasn't dealing with the real board giving him a real instruction to wire $25 million to some thieves.
Wow.
So we're moving into that kind of world. If people like that are vulnerable, everybody's vulnerable.
Yeah.
So how can you protect against it? The first is you begin these video conferences. You're going to have to begin these video conferences with an authentication.
Sure.
How can you detect that that is a deepfake? So there are two parts to it. What we do is we introduce an unpredictable element into the scene. We use the screen of the user's device to flash a series of colors which illuminates their face. It's an unpredictable, never repeated sequence of colors. And while their face is being illuminated, we stream video back to our servers where we analyze the reflection of those screen colors from the user's face. The way that it reflects off the face and interacts with the ambient light tells us that we're looking at a live skin-covered, human face-shaped 3D object.
Right.
And the sequence of colors tells us that they're right there, right now. It's a really strange problem that we've set the attackers. It's a tiny eye of a needle that those deepfakers have to jump through.
Right.
And we don't give them any feedback at all, so they don't even know what they're shooting for. So they make tiny mistakes. In our back end, we watch them make those tiny mistakes. We watch them experiment. We watch the new techniques that they're using to try to exploit our system, and we learn from them. We study them, we replicate them, and then we retrain our systems to stay ahead. That information asymmetry, the fact that we learn more about their techniques than they learn about ours, is what enables us to stay ahead of the enormous resources that are being applied to this. There are hundreds of groups out on the internet busily working together in a crime-as-a-service architecture to develop ways of defrauding biometric verification and liveness services. The median number of people in these groups is over 1,000. So there's an industry out there busily attacking these sorts of systems. We recently saw a bank in Latin America get attacked by deepfakes 50,000 times in less than a month. Sophisticated, optically perfect attacks.
What kind of attacks were those? Were those,
These were attempts to set up fraudulent bank accounts.
I see.
So there were a number of ways. These techniques are used for a number of attacks. For example, in the financial services sector or in the taxation sector, if you can set up a fraudulent account, you can use that to divert funds, fraudulent funds, to act as an off-ramp into the criminal community.
Very true.
In enterprises, remote workers. 27% of U.S. employees now work fully remotely.
Right.
You've never met these employees.
Yes. Yeah.
How do you know who it is that you've just onboarded into some of your company's most critical systems? If a synthetic identity or a fraudulent employee can be onboarded and given access rights into the enterprise systems, who knows what harm they can do?
Yeah, we just had the same. We just had that happen with North Korean workers working, I guess, in the U.S. tech firms, I believe. It was just all fraudulent and fascinating, really. They had I'll let you talk about that, but it's a really fascinating case. But back to that board meeting. So the attackers faked all the members of the board, and they targeted the one financial controller.
Correct, on a video call.
That's amazing.
Setting up deepfakes setting up deepfakes that are pretty almost pixel perfect is now easily doable by means of scores, if not hundreds, of easily accessible packages on the internet.
That's amazing.
People at this show can come to our stand and turn themselves into Mr. Bean just by standing in front of our camera and seeing it. It's as simple as that.
Sometimes I feel I'm already halfway there, but anyway. I'm going to get to some of the questions here. Why should we adopt biometrics for remote identity verification instead of just flashing an ID?
So there's a huge problem which is beginning to emerge. So flashing an ID, the ID can be forged,
of course,
and it frequently is. It can be stolen, and it frequently is. So it is synthetic identity fraud. For example, cost just the unsecured loans industry in the United States last year $2.3 billion, according to the Federal Reserve. We're on the Federal Reserve Bank's list of vendors who can help prevent synthetic identity fraud. So just presenting an ID tells the enterprise very little. It just says they possess something that looks like an ID.
Right.
If you'd like me to replicate your ID, I've got this great Photoshop program that'll do it. So that's no use. Your trust resides in people, not in grainy images of IDs. The real challenge is therefore, so you therefore have to check that you're dealing with the real human being, the person who's entitled to deal to cope with this. It goes beyond onboarding. It goes to authentication. Traditionally, the world has been based on SMS and OTP methods. This is now becoming a huge problem because social engineering is making it extremely easy for attackers to steal, to intermediate and capture those SMSs and OTPs by socially engineering the victims and gaining access. Fraud is now in the United Kingdom a bigger source of crime than all other sources put together. So things like OTPs and even authenticated codes are so vulnerable to social engineering. Phone-based solutions are better until that kid on his bicycle rides up onto the pavement and snatches your phone out of your hand, as happened to me in London a few weeks ago. The thing about biometrics are they can't be stolen, they can't be shared, and that is a unique and incredibly precious property that enterprises can rely on when they're trying to secure access to their systems or to their services.
So here's the thing about OTP, SMS, just digital things. It's basically one factor, and these verification methods are using one, maybe two factors. Now, if you're doing biometrics, you have to use a lot of different factors, a lot of different signals and inputs. How many do you really need to get to a confident a confident level of verification?
So let's distinguish people get very bound up in the biometric matching.
Sure.
How detailed do I need to be about the face verification?
Right.
10 years ago, that was a huge problem. That is completely solved.
Really?
Face verification is now between 10 and 100,000 times better than it needs to be to do a really good one-to-one
Really?
match.
Okay.
It's hundreds of times better than a human being. The days in which you'd say, look, I can't really rely upon the face recognition, I'll use a person, are over. If you introduce a person into the loop, all that to back up a face matcher, all that'll happen is you'll measure how good the person is. A study was done about 10 years ago on the performance of passport officers, who are the most trained, the most sophisticated people in matching faces to photographs. They found they got it wrong 10% of the time. Modern systems get it wrong 1 in 100,000. So it's just a different scale. So that is frankly a solved problem. The hard problem is not face matching. The hard problem is the liveness. How do you know whether this is a real person and there right now? And for that, we need enormous numbers of signals that we capture from the phone, from its parameters, from the face, from the unexpected the unexpected challenges that we introduce into the scene,
Right.
our flashing lights, and all those things have to come together. But they have to come together in a way that is usable and workable for the user.
Right.
It's not very difficult, for example, to produce a system that flashes lights and detects deepfakes, providing you don't mind rejecting good people 20% of the time.
Wow.
But that's not okay. That is unusable.
Yeah.
It's easy to do it in such a way that it works on high-end phones, but not on cheap $20 phones
Right.
that the less well-off have. What's really hard is to make it work 95 or 98% of the time, and on any of the 27,000 devices that we have in our database, and that's what it's taken us 10 years to do, and that's actually what delivers the usability that government and inclusivity and exclusion of bias that it makes it so attractive to governments.
Well, that's fascinating. But I'm afraid we're out of time. We're very close to it. I've been speaking with Andrew Budd, who's a founder and CEO of iProve. I'm Paul Wagenseal for Cyber Risk Alliance, and you can see all of this again at securityweekly.com/iProve-IDV. That's IPROOVIDV. And you can watch this on that channel and also on YouTube. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.